Hello, I am here today to present to you something that is very personal to me. It's called Access Without Assimilation. So this is going to be a trauma-informed and neurodiversity affirming support for autistic students in school settings, professional development. Today I am talking about this because this presentation is for those adults who are often right there with the students in real time. That's the teachers, the paraprofessionals, expectation coaches, behavior support staff, and the related arts teachers, because you're living this day in and day out. The heart of this presentation is access without assimilation. Autistic students should not have to look neurotypical, communicate neurotypically, or regulate neurotypically in order to be seen as successful. The goal is not to fix autism. The goal is to build support around communication, regulation, safety, learning, and belonging while still respecting who the student is, which at our heart is what everyone wants. We want to be respected for who we are. So, why this is important? It's important to remember schools are not neutral for autistic children. And this matters because many schools do not have the endless access to autism specialists or behavior counsel consultants or outside resources. But autistic students are still in classrooms, hallways, lunchrooms, related arts, and transition every single day. That means that the adults closest to these students need practical tools that they can actually use. School is not neutral. The environment can reduce barriers or it can intensify the stress. An adult's tone, the number of words used, the way a transition is handled, or how quickly correction happens can either support regulation or make dysregulation worse. This presentation is going to help you recognize that adult response is part of the support system. So I think this is probably one of my favorite things, and this is very important. This is a way of thinking about autism and a good framing of it. And this is the Maori word for autism, and it is takwatininga, and it means in one's own space and time. I love this wording because it feels much more human than reducing autism to a checklist of deficits. Autism is a different way of experiencing, processing, communicating, and responding to the world. That does not mean that the autistic student doesn't need support. Many absolutely do, but the support should not be built around making the student seem less autistic. This is about supporting their authentic self, how they're experiencing everything. And the support should be built around helping the student access the environment, communicate their needs, regulate, and participate in a way that's honoring how they move through the world. If you take nothing else from this, that is the one thing I want you to take, is honoring them for how they are experiencing the world. So this is using neurodiversity affirming language. And the words that we choose are very important. I mean, this helps shape how students think about themselves. And language matters because language also shapes expectations. When adults use terms like high functioning or low functioning, that can have some serious implications about cognitive levels, which is not fair. And those labels often hide what the student actually needs or what they're capable of. And we want to make sure we're honoring and looking at them not through a deficit lens, but through being capable. A student can be academically strong and still be overwhelmed by sensory input, transitions, social demands, or anxiety. A student can be non-speaking and still understand far more than adults assume. More helpful language describes the supports needed. Does the student use an AAC? Do they need visual support? Do they need extra processing time? Or sensory support? Do they need direct instruction? Neurodiversity affirming language does not ignore the disability. It stops treating the student as the problem, which we need to keep that in mind. The student is not the problem. What happens when behavior is misread? This is where adults have to slow down. Autism and trauma can overlap in ways that make behavior very easy to misread. What we may see may be shutdown, avoidance, rigidity, elopement, or dysregulation. But what it's signaling could be sensory overload, anxiety, communication difficulty, trauma-related stress, or an unmet support need. These behaviors that you're seeing, they are communications to you. But if we're using a correction first lens, we're more likely to interpret that as disrespect or refusal. A trauma-informed and neurodiversity affirming lens asks, what else could be happening here? And that's where that shift comes in. That's what we want to make happen. We want to shift how we think about this. That question matters. What else could be happening here? Behavior may be the visible signal, but it's not the full explanation. You're not being asked to diagnose the trauma, but you are responsible for pausing before assuming that it's an intentional non-compliance or disrespect. Moving from correction first to support first. Again, this is that lens shift that I'm talking about. This is the shift that I've got to emphasize. Correction first to support first instead. Correction first says, how do I make the student comply? Where support first asks, what is the student communicating and what support is missing? That does not mean there are no expectations. It does not mean unsafe behavior is ignored. It means adults stop treating every behavior as a personal disrespect. A support-first response looks for access, regulation, communication, and environmental needs before escalating. Same student, same behavior, completely different first question. And sometimes that first question changes the entire outcome of the moment. It's going to be difficult for us to transition our thinking, but we can do it. So here's what this can look like in a real school moment. A student becomes oppositional during a transition. The quick adult assumption might be they're being defiant. But maybe the student did not have enough warning. Maybe the next activity feels overwhelming. Maybe the transition happened too suddenly. Maybe the current activity was regulating and stopping it feels bigger to the student than it looks to the adult. A support first response could be a visual warning, fewer words, a first then statement, a predictable routine, time to shift, and a calm tone. The expectation still exists, the student still transitions, but the adult changes the support instead of turning the moment into a power struggle. A misdirection. Another common moment is a student not following a verbal direction right away. This is where adults can accidentally make things worse. You could repeat the direction louder, adding more language, or saying, "Do you know what I told you?" But that may actually increase the student's processing load. The student may need fewer words, more processing time, a visual cue, or a clearer expectation. A better response might be to pause, point to a visual, model the first step, or give wait time. Sometimes the support is not more talking. Sometimes the support is clearer access. Autistic students may need fewer words, more visual support, more processing time, and calmer adult responses. Here's a practical toolkit. These are some things that you can use in your classroom. And yes, this is geared towards students with autism, but these work for a lot of kids. So this is one thing that I do want you to know about is AFFIRM. AFFIRM stands for Autism Focused Intervention Resources and Modules. And it's going to give educators and support staff practical evidence-based strategies that they can actually use. These include visual supports, prompting, antecedent-based interventions, functional communication, social narratives, task analysis, self-management, technology-aided instruction, and then paraeducator supports. The point is that not every student needs every strategy. The point is that support should be intentional. Evidence-based does not mean one size fits all. It means figuring out what works for that child, which again requires that shift in your thinking. A good support matches the student, the setting, and the need. It gives the student access instead of just demanding compliance. Trauma-informed systems. So, safety is a shared system. You've got to remember that. Trauma-informed support cannot depend on one adult being patient on one good day. It has to be a shared practice. If a student gets visual support in one classroom, but public correction in another, the environment is still unpredictable. If one adult uses calm language and another adult takes behavior personally, the student receives mixed messages about safety. That matters because autistic students often rely on predictability, consistency, and emotional safety to access the school environment. And honestly, that's true for most kids too, even for us adults. A trauma-informed system means staff share language, expectations, and supportive responses across settings. Teachers, paraprofessionals, related arts teachers, behavior support staff, and expectation coaches all become part of the support system. Assume competence and family partnership. I cannot assume that. I cannot hit that assume competence hard enough. The goal is not to make autistic students appear neurotypical. The goal is access, regulation, communication, safety, and belonging. Assume competence. That is moving from that deficit lens to a lens of what they are capable. They just experience the world differently. So, assuming competence means that adults begin with the belief that autistic students can learn, communicate, grow, and participate, even when they do it differently. It also means we do not lower the expectations just because a student needs support. High expectations do not mean less support. They mean better support. Family partnership matters here too. Families know the student across settings. They know what helps, what escalates, what comforts, what overwhelms, and what has already been tried. Families should not be treated as problems to manage or people to blame. They should be treated as essential partners. The goal is not to lower the bar. The goal is to build the supports that let the students access it. We're all on the same team. We all want to see all of our students succeed. So we have to be team members. So what can you do on Monday? Here are a couple of ideas right there on the screen that will help you kind of start to shift that lens and start thinking about things that you can do differently. So, using fewer words, giving processing time, add visual support to the directions and transitions, teach the expectations directly instead of assuming students will just infer them. Rate behavior as communication before jumping straight to correction. Replace broad functioning labels with precise support descriptions. Instead of saying he's high functioning, say what support he needs. Instead of saying she refuses, ask what the behavior may be telling you. These are not huge, impossible changes. They're adult shifts, and those shifts can make school more predictable, respectful, and accessible for autistic children. So, this is what I want you to do. This is a pause and reflect. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one idea. Access, not assimilation. Autistic students should not have to mask, comply perfectly, or appear neurotypical to be understood as capable. So as part of the Google form reflection you're going to get, I want to ask you to think of a behavior that you maybe have labeled as defiant. Maybe it was refusal, maybe it was arguing, elopement, shutdown, or not following directions. Now I want you to shift the question. Instead of saying, why won't this student comply, or what is wrong with this student? Ask instead, what might this behavior be communicating? What might be going on with this student that I'm not seeing? These are important shifts that need to happen. And I know I have focused heavily on students with autism, but this is true for students across the board. If we switch that mindset and stop taking everything personally or assuming that they're doing this on purpose, we're going to see a shift in our classrooms. We're going to see a shift in our schools. You won't be entering into these power struggles. You might be that teacher that reaches that one child that hasn't felt safe in school before. And that's what this is all about. I want you to always think about that. That shift in the first question you think. It's not, why isn't the student doing this? But what might be communicated instead? The survey is also going to ask, which one phrase will you reconsider? What is one adult response that can escalate dysregulation? And what is one support you can try in your setting? None of these questions are meant to shame you. I don't want anyone to feel like that. This is something we all need to work on it because this is how we've been trained. It's always been correction first or punitive consequences. So this is going to be a massive shift for everyone. But in order to do that, we have to be very purposeful and reflective about how we are in our own practices in the classroom. And that's what I'm asking you to do. So the goal is not perfection. It is noticing, reflecting, and beginning to shift practice in small, real ways. I thank you for your time, and all of my resources are going to be on that last slide. I invite you to check out some of the videos and some of the websites that I've got on there. They've got great information. But most importantly, don't forget that Affirm website. So thank you so much, and have a great day.